Good morning. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you made it to the orientation. That's the first step you had to take. And I know that the registration process is not quite as straightforward as it appears, but you were all able to make it. So that's good. I'm just going to admit some more people here from the waiting room. Make sure that everybody's there, and we'll give it another 2 minutes before I get started. Okay, so begin shortly here. Okay. When I look at the number of participants, it seems that everybody's very punctual, so that's a good sign. So let me begin, and first lay out to you what I want to do with you. My name is Volker Janssen, by the way. I'm a professor of history and vice chair of the Department of History. And my job today is to make sure that you know what's coming up for you as a history major, what you need to get done, and make sure that you understand the course requirements and the opportunities that you have with the degree. So that's what I'm going to do today. First, I'm going to introduce myself. Then I'm going to introduce you to some people and offices that you need to know. They won't be here in person, but I'll tell you about them. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the history major. And I'm going to actually have you talk to each other just for a few minutes about what you want from your history major. I'm going to introduce you to the history nuts and bolts, and talk about the coursework requirements, other graduation requirements that are important, and your graduation opportunities or opportunities in the program. With that said, I understand that you already had some orientation this morning on the overall university requirements, so you should know a little bit about this already. I'll tell you a little bit about our student community and how to get involved, something that's probably even more important now that we're all sitting at home in our bedrooms and offices and living rooms and wherever there's space, and learn from there. And I actually want to applaud you to your commitment to doing this in this time when it's so much easier to say, well, let's wait a second until this has all passed us and we can actually go to college like students used to. So I admire your commitment and for doing this. At the end, in the last hour of today, I'll actually have 3 students visit this Zoom session, and they are current students, and they'll tell you about their experiences, and they might be the people that you want to ask the most questions. So let me first then tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Volker Janssen. If you wonder how to pronounce that, don't worry about it. I think my family doesn't get it right. It bothers my wife very much that she can't properly say my first name, which is fine. I am born and raised in Germany. I grew up there during the Cold War, and then didn't go to college right away. I actually wanted to go overseas, and so I spent some time living in England and Central America and New York, and actually wanted to become a journalist. And I worked for a newspaper for a while. I worked for public radio, and only went to college when I was 25, which is not ancient, but it's not. It wasn't right after school. I did draft resistance in between, and did my national service, which was a thing in Germany at the time, and then went to Hamburg University for what would be college, and then got a Fulbright scholarship to University of California, San Diego, where I got my PhD 15 years ago. A funny thing, since I went to college in Germany, or rather to university in Germany, college was an entirely strange thing for me to learn, because the university system in Germany is so very different. College requirements, college programs, the structure of college is something that I had to really learn from the ground up. That's nothing that was familiar to me. And so as a result, I think it took me several years to really understand what you guys are going through and what you have to do to get your degree. I think that was an advantage in a way that it's an advantage sometimes to learn a language and understand the grammar when you speak it as a second language. You may have had this experience. If you speak with someone who learns English, they can tell you the rules of English grammar, and you can't. You know how to use them, but you can't explain them. So in the similar way, that's how explaining college works for me. It's my second language. It's nothing I grew up with. What's my specialization? It's American history, especially California history. I have written on the history of punishment in prisons in California. I have written on economic history, history of technology. And sometimes people find it weird that a German teaches American history, and they think, oh, that's a mismatch. You should be American. To that I say, bogus, because I think you know this from experience, that growing up in the United States does not at all teach you American history. I think you can say, just looking around the country right now, there are plenty of people who have lived here all their lives and know nothing about this nation's history, right? So it doesn't come with the food order that you get at a restaurant. It doesn't come with your rental agreement by living here. History is something that you have to learn just like any other discipline. So there's nothing that sort of gives us inherent understanding. But that kind of comment also tells you why history has sometimes, why it poses a challenge sometimes to convey as a particular skill. People think that history is just something you sort of soak up by being places, by living somewhere. And that's just not how it works. You would never question a doctor's expertise about your body. If your doctor tells you your cholesterol is high, you're not going to say, what do you know about what's going inside of me? That's my cholesterol. You don't know that, right? You'll say, okay, well, you clearly are the expert. But in history, it doesn't work that way. You can't turn to your neighbor and say, listen, the way you think American history played out, that's completely wrong. They will not accept your expertise. You can have a PhD and 30 years of experience. They will still say, no, I know this better. So history as an expertise has a somewhat harder path to take in sort of public recognition. But there are also advantages, and I'll explain that to you later. So much for me. Let me tell you a little bit more about other people that you should know in the department and that are important contacts. Later on, by the way, I will post this PowerPoint into the chat as a file attachment. So at some point later, go to the chat room and save it. There's a little button where you can save your chat, and then all that information is there, and you can then download individual files. So there is, of course, myself as the vice chair of the department. The chair of the department is Dr. Jasmine Rostam Kolahi. And if you have questions that you think really need to get an answer from the chief, that would be her. So feel free to email her with questions. It's probably most important to know who the staff is, because the staff handles a lot of administrative chores and responsibilities. And without them, we would be nothing. So there's Art de Leon Tell. Art Tell is the name by which he goes. And he handles permission slips, questions about who your advisors are, and all the things that you think you can't find on the website, but you need someone to help you with that. Art is the man to see. Along with Lydia. Lydia is also you could call it our front office staff. And she also knows how to find things, how to contact people, where to turn with questions. If she doesn't know the answer, she will tell you who has the answer. Okay, so those two people are important to know. And these email addresses are especially important now that there is no on-campus life. You can't walk into the front office, so you need to know what link to click. All our faculty are worth knowing and getting to know, and you should make a point of looking through our faculty roster on our department website and seeing what people do, what they specialize in, and see how that aligns with your interests. And then maybe seek out those professors and seek out their courses so that you learn from them what you want to learn the most. If you have research interests and you know that at the end of your BA career, bachelor's career, you want to write a research paper on a particular topic, it's a good idea to know who is specialized in this in the department and who is most likely to give you advice. However, apart from the fact that all our faculty are experts in their fields and worth getting to know just for that reason, we all have additional responsibilities. So Dr. Kate Burlingham, for example, is our advising coordinator. In the department, we have a policy that every faculty advises a handful of students. So each semester, we take our students and we distribute them equally so that every faculty is responsible to advising these 20 or 30 majors. And usually you will be informed about who your advisors, specifically designated advisors are, or you will hear from them. However, there's one person who coordinates this and who makes final decisions on more complicated questions, and that is Professor Burlingham. So it's important to know her. For example, if you want to know who your advisor is, Art, Lydia, Professor Rostam Kolai, myself, and Professor Burlingham can help you with that question. So make a note of that. If you're interested in a teaching career and you know this already, and you want to know how to prepare for the credential that will give you the authorization and the ability to teach in California's K-12 system, Dr. Lisa Tran is our advisor in the pre-credential program. So make a note of her. If you are interested in an internship because you don't think that you are going to be a teacher, but there's other ideas that you have and you want to explore career paths, Dr. Margaret Mikhail is our internship coordinator. Now, the internship coordinator position changes once in a while. So you want to make sure that you go online and occasionally update that information for yourself, okay? Finally, we have a number of social events that history majors themselves organize, and we have a professor that advises that particular student organization, Phi Alpha Theta, and that is Dr. Stephen O'Connor. So if you're interested in getting involved in a student club and you don't quite know where was the link for that club, Dr. O'Connor will be able to help you. Also, along the lines of student community, we have a magazine, a student-written journal that is the particular work of dedicated group of students. They are usually members of Phi Alpha Theta, which is the History Honors Society. It's a nationwide honors society. And the Willabethan, and yes, that's an awkward name, and you will wonder where that comes from. Professor Burgdorf will tell you. The Willabethan has been the nation's best history magazine in Phi Alpha Theta for, I think, 25 years in a row. So we are very dedicated to this and to this publication where history majors write pieces, book reviews, movie reviews, research pieces. And that has sort of stood out nationwide as sort of the best effort within Phi Alpha Theta History Honors Societies. So that's a name to know as well. And finally, but certainly not least importantly, and make that director, not direct, Professor Fousekis is the director of the Center for Oral and Public History. And the Center for Oral and Public History, when you come back to campus, will have a brand new facility in the Pollack Library building. And it's one of the, I would say, probably ranks in California in the top 2 oral and public history institutes. Actually, it's one of the few institutes in the nation that conducts both public and oral history. So is skilled in creating collections of historical interviews. For example, we have conducted in the past up to 700 interviews with Marine Corps veterans in Southern California. And I remember traveling the country for these interviews. And we have a lot of these oral history collections that are unique historical material. But we also specialize in training people in public history, how to stage an exhibit, how to work as a public historian for a museum, for an archive, for a company, for the public sector. So that's something that the Center for Oral and Public History specializes in, and Professor Fosekis is the director of that institute. And if you feel this might be a career path in your interest, then that is a name to know. All right, so let's move on and talk a little bit about the history major as a subject. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually send you into small groups. There's nothing you have to do, that will happen on its own. And I will ask that you talk to each other about, first introduce yourselves to each other, and then tell each other what are your favorite historical subjects? Why are you interested in the history major? And I'm going to give you just 3 or 4 minutes for this. You will get to meet each other all in future courses and on campus. So here's a chance to just meet 3 or 4 other students, okay? So I'm going to send that out right now, and I will call you all back in about 3 or 4 minutes. This should now happen. There we go. Okay. Hey, Danielle, I wonder why you're still here. I'm going to move you into another room, see how that works. Are you still? Okay, Danielle, I'm not sure why you are still with me and why I wasn't able to send you to a room. But bear with me while I'm trying to fix a PowerPoint problem here, yeah? Oh, there you go. Okay, that works. All right, Danielle, can you hear me? I'm going to unmute you now. Okay, you may not have a microphone then. Okay. All right, well, I trust that you can hear me, and then just wait a few minutes. Let's see. I can't get you in the room. Well, that's a bummer. Okay. Well, you just have to wait with me then, okay? Hello, Danielle. Okay, I hear a lot of different noises, but I don't hear your voice. Okay. That was strange because I heard also the background noises, but I didn't hear your voice. Feel free to speak to me. That's okay to do. Okay. Close all rooms and bring them back. All right, people are back. Excellent. Okay, I hope you had a chance to talk to each other and work out your microphones. I trust that whatever you have done over the past 6-7 months, you all at some point became experts at Zoom and know how to handle this. This is why I can see you all, so that's good. History as a subject is, I think, a really privileged subject because we have the unique chance to basically be experts in anything we want to be. So a math major won't be able to tell you much about history. However, you as a history major can easily research and study and become an expert on the history of the discipline of math. That's what we do in the history of science. You can easily become an expert on the history of engineering and tell engineering majors something they don't know about their own discipline, and you become a historian of engineering, or a history of medicine, historian of public health, a historian of philosophy, and historian of futurism, the way in which people over the past have imagined the future. There is nothing that doesn't have a history. And so as a result, your choices and specialization and your fields of interest are almost infinite. You don't have that in any other discipline. If you major in public health, but really you're more interested in, I don't know, pencil drawings, you're not really going to be able to make a connection. But if you're interested in drawings in history, you can write the history of art, or you can study the history of art or of public health. Everything is available to you when you are an historian. And that is why historians are so widely useful and meaningful. That may not be something that everybody knows, but it's something for you to learn and to learn how to promote, because you need to be your own advocate in the future once you graduate. I'm going to show and play you a little video that tells you how my colleagues and I think of history and why history as a major is so important. It's maybe a bit loud.
To me, history is a magic key into the present.
Businesses, private entities often complain that one of the things their students lack is precisely that kind of skill.
This is a career valuable skill in education, public administration, in law.
With a history degree, you can write, you can teach. Ultimately, though, you can think.
If you want to work in politics, history is a good background. It's going to offer you the skills you need to succeed.
Anything that requires investigating, anything that requires research, and anything that requires talking about it.
We want to help students kind of shape their future careers.
We want you to work as historians after your degree is completed. We want you to be out there.
What do you want to do with your life? What is it important to you? And then how can history help you achieve those goals?
History matters now more than ever.
No, gotta move on. So that history matters now more than ever, I think, is not a difficult sell to make. We have said this 4 years ago. I think that's almost how old the video is, but it seems to become more present, more urgent a truth to repeat now. And history is a couple of things, and I want to just quickly lay out to you why we think history is worth studying. Because there's people out there who would say, and there's actually a book that has that title, why study history when it's already on your phone? Right? Any of you can pick up a phone, can put in any historical personality's name, enter it into Google, and not only will you be led to Wikipedia, and possibly a pretty good Wikipedia site, but to other features, video documentaries, websites, and everything seems to be readily available on the phone if you want to know things in history. But history is more than just a body of knowledge. History is more than just a lot of books, right? And you know this because you hate it when people turn to you and say, so what do you want to study as a history major, in college? And you say, yeah, I want to be a history major. And they say, oh, you like dates and names and places, facts. You just want to learn all those facts. And then 4 years from now, your uncle will try to test you on whether you're really good at history and give you some sort of random historical episode and test you whether you know this. And then they will scoff at you because you young whippersnappers don't know anything about history because that particular detail you don't know. And that will inevitably happen. It certainly happened to me, not with uncles, but other people who believe that when we are historians, we just know a lot of shit. And that's not really how it works. Okay, for example, I'm not particularly good with dates. I'm not particularly good with names. I'm good with faces, but that's not really something that comes to play when you read documents. So what is it about history that makes us good at our work? It's not that we are walking encyclopedias, a dictionary. Who needs that? If I need a dictionary or encyclopedia, I pick up a dictionary or encyclopedia or my phone. I don't need somebody who walks around in that function. So history is a method of thinking. That's the way you should embrace it. History is a way you think about the world right now and about the world in the past. And those, for you as a history major, are always connected. Every time you see anything in life, you see not just the 3 dimensions of what's in front of you, but you see a 4th dimension, right? You see things over time. You see a neighborhood and you think, I wonder what was here before. I wonder how they built this. You see a politician and you think, I wonder what her story is. You see a company and you think, I wonder how they came up with that idea. So you always think historically, you think across a timeline. And when you really develop that way of thinking, eventually it will feel like what other people see in front of them that seems so plain and simple for you becomes a fascinating story. For older generations amongst you, you may know the movie The Matrix, right? A real good history student will feel like they have seen through The Matrix. If you don't know what that movie is, shame on you. I'm kidding. It's completely okay. You don't need to know the movie, but it's as far as Keanu Reeves movies are concerned, it's a better one. His inability in acting actually comes to his benefit there. So you will be able to see through the matrix. You see things not just as they appear, but you know their story. And that's a really powerful thing to have. If some politician, let's just say some president, let's imagine a president who lies, who abuses the Constitution, who dares you to be outrageous, offensive, intimidating. It's a fictional scenario. You will be able to see those, to hear those statements and know that they're lies. You will be able to challenge deceptions because you know the origins of these stories. That's powerful, and that's something we don't have much of. So that's why you, as an historical thinker, not just someone who just walks around knowing stuff, but a thinker, that's why that's important. History is also a process of researching. So you ask questions and then know where to get those answers and get those answers reliably. Okay, it's not enough to just Google it. As a history major, we will introduce you to a whole set of tools that will give you better ways of researching and ways of researching that others don't have. And I know a lot of students who went into careers that weren't necessarily history careers, but jobs where they stood out because they knew how to find answers. Okay, so again, it's not you walking around having all the answers. It's you figuring out how to get answers and ask good questions. That's another research skill. Asking good questions. I'm sure you've heard this, excuse me, I'm sure you've heard the saying, good students have all the answers. Great students have the questions, right? So that's what you will develop over time, the ability to ask good questions and then find ways to answer them. And that makes you a powerful researcher. And research, the ability to research and find answers, that's important everywhere. Whether you work in the public, in the Department for Public Works or Water, whether you work for Google, or whether you work for I don't know, Kraft Foods, research, asking good questions and coming up with answers, that's a skill that everybody values. History also gives you an imagination. A lot of people that live in the today may have a difficult time imagining what else is possible. For example, a lot of people say, I don't see how we can ever move from a petroleum-based economy to a renewable energy source economy. How is it possible? We can't move away from that. We're just too stuck. And you as an historian will know that, well, we actually had other energy-based economies before. We were based on coal for the longest time and moved to oil. We were based on wind and horsepower and just plain brawn before that. So we have moved from one energy base to another before. So yeah, it's absolutely possible. Yes, you can do this. What makes this easier? Well, going back, asking that question in history, we again find answers and we become more imaginative. You, as a history major, will have more ideas because you know what people have done in the past. It also makes you more creative. Imagination and creativity is one of the byproducts that you may not be focusing on all that much as a history major, but once you're through your program, you will find out that you have a lot more imagination about what can be done than a lot of other people. Synthesis, having all the information and laid out to you in great detail and being able to find a way to summarize this and give people the gist of what's important here. That's vital in modern society, and that's something that people will look for when they hire in any career field, in any profession, in any discipline. We will ask you in history to write papers, sometimes longer ones. I, in particular, like asking big questions with short spaces, where you really need to make every word count. So tell me the origins of World War II in 800 words. That's much more likely to be the kind of challenge you have once you are graduated. Then please write as long as you want and feel free to talk to me all day about what you know. That doesn't happen. Okay. You will have the chance to write 10-page, 15-page papers, but learning how to write with every word being just the right word, that's a much more important skill. And you will learn that here with us, and that's communication. Now, let me introduce you to just show you some examples of history majors who made something with their degree. And we have, and I think the video that I sent you in emails before mentions this, we have probably close to 100 different career paths amongst our alumni. They do teaching like Ali does at San Antonio College in LA. We have people that work in the federal government. Daniel Barbeau here, he works as a foreign service officer with the State Department. I sometimes get him on panel conversations, but then sometimes he's also undercover and cannot be reached for about 3 or 4 months. He was in Afghanistan came back as a veteran, and now is back undercover in places around the world. Not entirely James Bond because he's American, but kind of getting there. Eric had a real interest in beer, not just to drink it, that's more ordinary, but actually to understand the history of beer. He was a real beer buff. And he decided to write a paper on the history of craft brewing in California, and became such an expert that when he traveled around the country and basically offered his resume to craft breweries, one eventually said, like, we don't really have a job for you now, but we know that we need you because you have a knowledge about our industry that no one else does. And so now he is with Drake's Brewery in Northern California. Incidentally, his wife had a thing about cider, and she works for Martinelli's. So that's just an episode that tells you if you have a particular passion, a particular interest, you can find a job for yourself. Andrew here graduated a while ago, but I like his story because he decided to just go and live abroad, and he went to Berlin and works there as a writer and has been there ever since. Going overseas is always a good idea, and it's much easier than it used to be. So with a history degree, you have a versatility that makes that possible. Christine, down in the bottom right, she works for Wells Fargo, and she creates family histories for the wealthy. And you'll be surprised how many wealthy families there are. So there's a lot of work for you. Stephanie, up top center, she works in the entertainment industry and does research for Space 150 and production coordination for Space 150. And they do historical content for Warner Brothers or Disney. And you may have noticed that generally the public is interested in history. They do like history. They may not like historians, so I don't want to hear from me, but they do like history. Okay, and that can be your advantage. There's a lot of places where the authenticity of what feels like authentic truths from history, where that's really desired, and that will work for you. And then finally, Nicole Roten here. She works for the Defense Department's POW-MIA accounting agency, which is a mouthful. Short, it's DPAA. And she works out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and conducts research and leads field investigations around the world to locate crashed World War II airplanes. She travels about 4 months out of the year. And up there, that's a picture of her in Papua New Guinea, where she spends a lot of time. She's also dug up crash sites in East Germany and found bodies of missing pilots. And if you think, well, that job ought to be right about done, not so. There's still thousands of World War II pilots that are missing in Papua New Guinea. And this little small office in the Department of Defense still looks for them and finds them. The families of these pilots, or the descendants of the families of these pilots, for them, this is still as important as it has ever been. So while there are people out in the public that think that people that die in war or get captured are losers, there are a lot of people in the federal government offices that actually value that service and still make that commitment. And I sent you in the chat site in the chat page a couple of links, including about 9 different links to career webinars, roundtable conversations that I had with recruiters and alumni about different jobs. Nicole is in one of these panels, and one of these YouTube links will lead you to a panel on jobs in government. And I tell you with no hyperbole, or hyperbole, however you take that, that there is not an agency or office in the federal government that doesn't have an historian. So if public service, working in the public sector is of interest to you, they value historians immensely. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. Okay, let me move on here. So now let's go to the program nuts and bolts. And for this, I'm actually going to quickly stop the share and make sure that I upload in your chat the what we call green sheet. Give me just a second here, I'll be right there. Okay, you should be now seeing in the chat room, you should see a green sheet PDF, which you can click and download. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to upload this presentation if I can. No, I can't do that while I play it. All right, I'll do it later. Okay, so if you know how to raise your hand in Zoom, do so if you have successfully downloaded the screen sheet. And if you don't know how to raise your hand as a Zoom tool, then you can also do it in person. Okay, thank you, Christopher. I like your guitar in the background, by the way. Nice. I have one too, by the way.
Yeah, yours is higher than mine.
Yeah, well, I'm 6'7", so I can reach to the top of the ceiling and just grab it from there. Okay, so we've all been successful.
As far as doing that, the hands up thing, how do you do that? Is that like a chat symbol you can do, or? So
I'm gonna let another user explain this because as the host, my features are different. Who wants to say how that works?
At the bottom of the screen, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
At the bottom of the screen, you got your list of like your mic, your video. There's going to be an icon with 2 people there. It says participants.
Okay.
When you select that, you're going to have a little screen pop up on the right-hand side.
It's going
to have a list of everybody's names. You got raised hand right there.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing the PowerPoint, and then you all have that that PDF to look at. Okay. Let's see here. So. You know your GE requirements, and because you are a transfer student, you have completed a good chunk of this. So on GE, you already had your orientation. So now it's about what courses do you need to complete for the major. There's 45 units you need in total for the major. But for you, that's a little less because you already completed some of these GE requirements. So the History Introductory Survey and the World Civilizations. Here, let me get my laser pointer so I can make sure that you know where I am. So these world history requirements you will have already completed at your community college, and that will also be true for your US History Introductory Survey. If you haven't, for your transfer students here, you can complete this in a number of ways. You can either complete History 170A, the first half of US history, and 170B, the second half of US history, and get that met if you don't have the transfer courses. Or you can take 180 and 190. 180 is the entire US history survey, and 190 is the entire US history survey once more with a focus on ethnic diversity. Or you can do 180 and 70A or 70B, although I don't see why that makes a lot of sense to do the whole survey and then a part survey once more. Nonetheless, this will not really be an issue for most of you as transfer students. So really what's most important for you are the intermediate requirements. That's probably where you will begin. Okay, and there is the historical thinking seminar and the historical writing seminar. They should not be taken at the same time. We don't block you from doing so, but we strongly urge you to first do the thinking, then do the writing. That's a general rule in life. So take your 300A course and And we have actually reserved a section just for you as new students in 300A that I will be teaching in spring. And I will show you the details of that on that in a second. That's with this particular focus on you coming in as transfer students in spring. So in that 300A seminar, I'm not only going to talk about the different methods of historical thinking. I'll also talk about the campus, the resources on campus, and how you can sort of get to feel at home as quickly as possible, even virtually in spring, so that you don't feel like, for the next 2 years, you're always sort of a step apart because you came in from the community college. So I will make a particular emphasis on orienting you both into the historical methods in historical thinking, but also in the campus. Then, after these intermediate requirements, come your upper division course requirements. And here, pay good attention, it can get a little tricky to understand. You need 2 courses out of 3 categories, but there are 4 categories. So, one of these categories you can lay aside. And the categories are more or less geographic. There's United States history, there's European history, there's world and comparative history, and then there is non-West history, history that is of the world, but decidedly leaves out Europe and the United States. So to really focus on the regions that historically we have not paid sufficient attention to. So you can pick 3 of these categories and then take 2 courses in each category. Okay, so 2 US, 2 Europe, 2 world, or 2 non-West, 2 world, 2 Europe, whatever combination you like. Okay, and I will show you in a second how you can figure out what courses work here. In addition to that, or after that, but you don't have this, there doesn't need to be a timeline here. You have 2 upper division and electives, and any upper division courses in history will do this. So whether you take 2 more US courses already, even though you already took 2, that's fine. You want to take an internship course or any other history course in the upper division, meaning 300 and above, will meet this. And that is your upper division elective. After that, your advanced requirement, and that should really come in your final semester, comes to 490T. That's your senior research seminar. Everyone completes that seminar. You must have 300A and 300B completed by then. You will not be admitted otherwise, but that makes sense. If 300A should be your first, 300B your second, your final capstone seminar should be your 490. And there you will really try to show all the skills that you learned, your research, your writing, your thinking skills, and you write a long research paper that should hopefully be your flagship, the piece with which you want to demonstrate how good you really are as a history major. Okay, so those are your requirements in the department for the major. Now, there's a couple of things you want to know. Because you're entering in spring 21, some rules apply for upper division GE, and you may have already heard that this morning. So it's called double counting. If you take a course that meets an upper division requirement in GE, let's say in the category B, and it's a history course, and it's an upper division history course, that course can count to meet your GE requirements and your major. So let's say there's a course, History 330, the history of science, and it meets a GE science requirement. You can also use it as an upper division course to meet one of these here. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so because you want to make sure that you meet all requirements, some courses can hit 2 birds with 1 stone. Okay. Now this double counting only works for courses that meet both GE and the major. But you can't double count anything in these categories here. So you can't take a course and say, well, that counts for world and for Europe. That doesn't work. Okay? So I'm now going to show you the backside of this paper. And here, in a somewhat elaborate format, you can see all the different courses that we have on our roster, the courses that we offer, which are the highlighted ones, and what category they fit in. And you will see it's not very neat because history isn't all that very neat. World War II as a history class meets all these requirements. You know, you learn a lot about US history, but you also learn a lot about non-West history. So as a result, a class in World War II history will meet everything across the board. The same is true for World War I, with some minor asides. So what this means is that if you want to meet these different categories, sometimes you need to figure out where do you want to put your course. Okay, if you take a World War II course, do you want to meet your US requirement for your category, or do you want to meet a world requirement? Now, there are a couple of hands still up. I'm not sure whether those are questions. If you have a question, you can just speak up right now.
Yeah, I do. So is there a like a link that I can go to this whenever I can? Just to see this list. Is there anything on the Fullerton website, or is there a chance I can come back to this?
Were you able to go into the chat room and see the PDF to download?
Yeah, give me. Oh, I'm sorry.
So if you go into the chat room, there you can download this paper.
Okay.
Okay, because it changes every semester. It's not particularly useful to have it online. And so we do show all these courses listed on our course on our department site, and the page shows all the courses that are offered in the next semester. This particular paper, I think you want to download from our chat.
Yeah. So I did download it, and I just opened it up, and it has everything here. So thank you. That's answered everything.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Any other questions?
Yes, Professor, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Armin.
Hello. So I have, I'm taking the SMPP compliant route.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, do I still need to take 110A and 110B, even though I finished my lower division courses at a JC?
No, I don't think so. We have agreements with community colleges about these courses, and in the process of admissions, they will go through your transcript and actually then give you credit for these GE requirements. So right now, it may still take some time for the university to fully process all your transcripts. Let's say in a month from now, when you go into your portal and go to your TDA, and I think you were introduced to this in orientation, in the early orientation, you can see what you are getting credit for GE. Okay, and you should see there that that's met.
So for the safe bet, do I start with the intermediate courses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions right now?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Peter first, and then the next. Yes, Peter, go ahead.
So for the upper division core requirements, where it says 2 courses in 3 of the 4 categories, could you repeat that for me one more time?
Yeah, it took me a while to learn this too, so that's okay. So altogether, your upper division core requirements are 6 courses, 18 units. Okay, and you have 4 categories, and you pick out of the 4 categories, you pick 3.
Okay.
Okay, and then in each of these 3 categories, you take 2 courses.
Okay.
Right. The thing you have to do is you have to look at the courses that are offered and see, okay, what then compare that with the schedule when they're being offered, and say, okay, what requirements do I want to meet here? Do I want to say put the Great Depression course in my elective or in my US field? Does that make sense? Now, if you change your mind eventually and say, all right, I put World War II in non-West, but actually I'm not going to be able to complete that particular category and want to move it, we can move it afterwards. So this is not written in stone. It's better for you to think about this beforehand because it's a little bit of a bureaucratic hassle to move your courses around on your TDA afterwards. But that certainly is a possibility. Just try to think and plan out a little bit of what you're most interested in. Are there other questions? Alice, your hand is up. Is that from earlier, or do you have a question? No question?
I don't have a question.
Okay, all right. All right, then I'll just take it down. All right.
I have a question. I do apologize.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, I got a question. The history internship, and I got two. The history internship and the independent study 498 and 499. What does it consist of?
Okay.
It's first for me. I'm a transfer student, so I'm just.
Everybody is. I'll talk about the intern. No, actually, right now you are actually all transfer students. I will talk about the internship in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to address that in a little bit. And because I want to make sure that we have time for our student panel, I'm going to see any other urgent questions.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Vicente. Yeah, thanks, Vicente. Can we move on, or RT, you had a question?
Sorry.
Okay, Armin, yes, one more time.
Yes, so for the upper division courses, it says with an approval of the advisor. Now, do I need to ask the approval of the advisor before taking the course?
Let's see, where does it say that?
This is with my SMPP compliant letter for the course.
Oh. Well, you basically you want to speak to Lisa to Professor Lisa Tran.
Okay.
For this credential preparation, and then get her advice on what the best courses are.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I'm going to move on. So you can still ask questions afterwards. All right. So I just want to make sure that you all understand that the 300A that I'm offering in spring, Tuesday, Thursdays, 8:30. One half will be synchronous, meaning we all meet on Zoom at real time, and the other half will be asynchronous, meaning you work and complete work independently. That is specifically for you, for transfer students that are coming in spring. No one else can take that class right now. Okay, and the class code is 2330. Okay. So I recommend you take that course in spring. Now, here are a couple of other courses that I want to recommend to you because they're taught by good people and are interesting and give you a little bit of the diversity of the department. The Great Depression with Professor Cathra is a great class to take. And since we are in this moment where we are having a couple of new records, the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression, the greatest health crisis since the flu of 1918, the biggest constitutional crisis since 1800, all those things. We have all sorts of records. The Great Depression is a great point of reference right now for you. Urbanization of American Life with Professor P.U. Moore is a fantastic class. I'm teaching the United States between 1845 and 1877, and that's basically a big package for the Civil War. And since we also seem to be as close to Civil War since 1860, another historical reference point, that's a good one to take. This department has quite a bit of experience amassed in digital history. So if you see yourself working down the line in public history, but in the digital field, meaning creating history websites, working with historical graphic animations and that sort of thing. A practicum in digital history is a good idea. Vietnam War, the Vietnamese perspective, yes, that should be perspective, is a fantastic course with Dr. Sun. Concepts in world history, anyone who wants to do the credential program as a teacher is well advised to take Concepts in World History, 400B. Okay, there, this one. And also I recommend American Social History, 1750 to 1860 for teachers, also very good. And the United States in the 1950s. So that's just a couple of courses. There are others, of course, that are still open for you to enroll in. But the one that you really ought to write down is my 300A in spring. All right. Moving on here, remember that I will, once we're done, I'm going to close the PowerPoint and I will put the PowerPoint into the chat so you can download it. Okay? So don't fear that you will lose this. I want to talk about other graduation requirements. If you do good double counting, let's say you use History 330, History of Science for GE and the major, you may end up at the end with easily 15 units to spare. Remember, you need to finish with 120. I don't know why I put up the 3 for 120. It makes no sense. So you need to finish 120 units, but you may be done after 105. What do? You can just sort of roam around the schedule and pick any courses, really. Underwater basket weaving, not a thing, but you could take that. But you may also want to do something more meaningful and say, okay, how about a minor? And the minors in our college are particularly useful for you. So how about a forensic anthropology certificate or aging studies, gerontology, an anthropology minor, maybe a public policy minor if you want to go into government. So think about it now, how you want to use your additional electives and whether you want to make a minor a part of your degree. There was an immediate question raised for this. Yes?
Oh, it's Ashley. So I just want to say hi. So for this, for my electives, I was actually able to double major. So that's how I got my Chicano Studies major.
Right. Thank you, Ashley. So if you really plan this out well, then you can even create a double major. Right? And given that you are getting a BA, a bachelor's degree, which is an important qualification, but not one that, say, makes you the top of the pile out of 100 applicants for a good job. Adding something to your degree that makes you stand out is a good idea. And it can add a particular skill, say an ethnic studies capability, as Ashley did, or you can I have one student who's getting a minor in screenwriting because he wants to work in film production. And so that combination, that will make him different in any job application process. This here is the website to visit in our college. And again, remember, you can get the PowerPoint downloaded here at the end. Other opportunities I want to really stress to you, and I will do this again in 300A. And sorry for the panel participants who are already here. I'm going a little over time. The digital public and oral history program that we offer really gives you additional skills and capabilities that you really should take a good look at. So please visit the COF website that I'm showing here and think about how you can make your history major more than a history major, but something that really becomes directly applicable, directly relatable to fields of work. Study abroad. You have already been introduced to this by the college, I am sure, but I'm saying this in addition because history professors actually do a lot of these study abroad programs. So Cambodia and Vietnam has been offered by Professor Sun. And imagine going, this won't happen in next summer because we've canceled this because of COVID for next summer, but maybe the summer after, If you stick around long enough, you can still make that happen. This might be also a good way to use your additional electives, right? You can go to Cambodia for, I think, $2,500 for 5 weeks. You will visit small villages. You will try to teach children in a Cambodian village. And if you want to become an educator, and in a job interview, you can say, well, what I learned when I tried to teach in a Cambodian village, and people go, what? That's interesting. That's new. That's something else. You set yourself apart that way. Okay. I have offered Berlin, and I offered you. I put into the chat a YouTube link to my video on our Berlin study abroad. You learn so much, not just historically, but about life, about the world in study abroad. And really, your college years are probably the only time you will ever get a chance to do study abroad. And in study abroad, you do something like visit a concentration camp. If you ever travel to Europe with friends as backpackers, there's a good chance they will say, let's skip the concentration camp. That's depressing. Let's not do that. Let's do something more fun. There's a lake to go swimming in Berlin, so that's much better. But visiting a concentration camp is a life-altering experience. So you get to do that with study abroad. So I want to really urge you to think about that. And then we also have what's called the study of the DC Scholars Program. And I'm going to play you, I'll take the time to play you a video of a history major who went with me to Washington, D.C. in spring 2018, where we spent an entire semester there. So raise your hand if the volume doesn't come through.
I like that I'm so close to the Capitol. My apartment's only a 20-minute walk from the Capitol, and the Library of Congress and the Supreme Court are right across the street from the Capitol as well. I like that it's a really young town, so there are a lot of interns everywhere, and there are a lot of people the same age as me, and so it makes the city more fun to go out and do things. I also like meeting people that I wouldn't normally get to meet in Fullerton or Riverside in California in general. Visit the White House or visit Smithsonian's, touring all the memorials like Lincoln Memorial, Vietnam Memorial. It's all a short walk from the Capitol. They're all in one place. Another thing I would want to do when I was out here was watch a Wizards game, and I've been to 2 already. I plan on going to a Nationals game and hopefully a Capitals game. At first I actually wanted to work in a museum in Smithsonian's because I'm a history major and I'm interested in history. I really didn't have any interest in politics. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get to work in a congressman's office in Washington, D.C., right across from the Capitol, and seeing them write bills and handing bills in, walking to the Capitol just to go drop off a coat, or walking past congressmen every day, seeing Bernie Sanders just walking down the halls, or meeting John Lewis. A lot of what I do is going to briefings that are on different subjects like poverty or immigration or environment or foreign affairs, and I will take notes on those briefings, write up a memo, and send them to the appropriate staffer. If you want a job on the Hill or in a congressman's office, then you have to be on the Hill to apply for those jobs, and you have to be here to network for those jobs. So I've gotten used to the professional setting, I think, and I still have a lot to learn, but I'm really interested in staying here.
Washington, D.C.
So Vincent actually now still works in Washington, D.C. for Congressman Takano. And there's a number of other students that turned their DC internship into a career. And as he said, you don't need to actually be all that passionate about politics. And I know that right now, there's a good number of people in Washington, D.C. who do everything to make it as disgusting and awful for outsiders as possible, and try to convince all of you that politics is something you just want to cut out of your life because it just causes so much headache and heartache. But DC is still an important place. It was important in 2018, still important. It may become even more enjoyable in the future. And so if you have a particular interest or passion that is somewhere in public affairs, you want to promote higher education, there's a lobbying group in DC that does that. You want to work for environmental causes, there are plenty of lobbying organizations trying to promote environmental policy. You want to work, you believe in more equality in terms of income or taxes. So there are organizations, agencies, that all sorts of places where you can apply yourself and then end up working there. And there's at least 6 or 7 history students that are now working in politics because they began with an internship, either in DC or locally with a congresswoman's or congressman's office. So keep that in mind. This is, Vincent will forgive me for saying this, Vincent was a good student, but he wasn't a wunderkind. He was a regular guy. And I don't mean this in a dude way. It's like he was a regular student, so he was good. He was learning. He got the internship, and now he is a staffer on the Hill, and he's loving it. And he feels he's really doing something, and he is. Internships generally are a great way to meet your elective. If you don't know exactly what you want to do yet, we have actually a catalog of internships that ranges from the museum to school sites to historic sites to archives, historical organizations, national or state parks, local government agencies, media production companies, advocacy groups, or non-government organizations. But you can also find your own internship. We are really quite generous. If you can tell us what you're going to do, how this might relate to history, we're willing to listen, and we're going to sign you up, and you can create an internship, and you can build your own path into your career that way. Again, this will be saved as a PowerPoint, so you don't need to worry that this will be a one quick display and then gone. Your student community. We have the Phi Alpha Theta National History Honor Society. I urge you to go to our department website here, click that link and sign up and become a part of that community. We also have our very own Cultural and Public History Association, CSUF, CPHA, and they create a lot of different events and activities so that you can feel and be part of history majors beyond just your coursework. It feels difficult to imagine this right now as you're sitting all at home, but we will come back. And then these kind of communities will be really enjoyable. In the meantime, they offer a lot of things online, so you can participate that way. And then the Wilhelmine is the Journal of History. So if you really want to become a writer and become better as a writer, we have a course on history and editing where you learn that skill, and you will work on putting out this particular magazine. Now, I want to move to a very different segment, and I'm sorry that I went over time here, and introduce you to 3 students that are currently with us and went through the same experience that you went through. They came in as transfers and have been with us since then. We have with us Alexis. Let me make sure that Alexis is there. Alexis, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, there you go. Good to see you. Alexis, 23 years old. She graduated actually in spring this year and is now a graduate student with us. She comes from Orange Coast Community College. Maybe some of you are as well. And she's looking to work in the DC area, either in a museum or archives, but ideally, and I think that really sort of fascinated her, is Nicole Roten's work with the DPAA, which is, I admit, the most adventurous and most exciting work. To travel around the world and find crashed World War II airplanes is about as close to Indiana Jones as you can get. I think she also makes more money than I, so there's all sorts of good things about that particular job in Hawaii. And then we have with us Jonathan Cabanas. Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Hi, Jonathan. So Jonathan, 22 years old, will graduate next fall. He's from Santiago Community College. And Jonathan's looking into teaching, but also possibly work in the public sector, maybe city government, and is thinking of adding a minor in political science. And if you guys, the new ones, makes you think like, oh, are you going to just introduce us to everybody who has it all figured out? No, we are all still in the process of working this out, and that's okay. I want to just confess to you that I only went back to college when I was 25. So Jonathan is way ahead of me as far as that's concerned. And then you already heard from Ashley Inigas, 25 years old, will graduate this spring and comes from Santiago Canyon Community College. And she actually plans on also completing the MA, hopefully with us, and then move on to get her PhD and strive for a teaching career in higher education along the lines of something like professor at Cal State Fullerton, something, some sort of low-light job like that. So these three students, actually, I want to ask them some questions. I first want to turn to Alexis, and I have to admit I'm sort of scrambling around. I completely lost the questions that I had written down for you, but I believe you have them, right, Alexa?
Yes, I do.
Alexis, sorry. So do you want to get us started?
Yeah. Did you want me to go through all of them, or just
No,
one?
just if you want to sort of share the first question and your answer, and then hand it over to Jonathan and Ashley, that'd be great.
All right. So the first question was, what did your community college experience teach you that provided helpful in making the transition to CSUF? And I honestly think two things really helped going to community college. One was taking classes at OCC allowed me to see what I really liked. And when I got to Fullerton, I already had that foundation for what I wanted to go into. That way I wasn't really wasting my time, because I was really big on I don't want to waste my time. And I wasn't too interested in staying longer than I had to, since I'd spent 3 years in community college. And the second one was writing. My senior year of high school, I think I wrote maybe a paragraph, if that, and it was the bare minimum, 3 sentences. So when I got to community college, they really gave me the nuts and bolts of writing tools that I found were really useful and helpful when I got to Fullerton, because I honestly don't think I would have been prepared to write the way Fullerton expects you to write coming in as a freshman. So that really helped giving me the confidence to hit the ground running when I started taking my 300A and my 300B class.
Thank you, Alexis. Jonathan, what are the important things you learned from community college?
So the thing that I actually really enjoyed about, or I actually really appreciate about community college before transferring to CSU, because I actually got accepted to Fullerton before I went to community college. But what I found was I can, the classes are pretty introductory. Being that it's community college, you can, get classes sometimes a little easier than you can through the Cal State system, because there's more students here who want to get the classes that they need. So sometimes it can get like oversaturated with students. So going to community college was definitely that was probably one of the biggest reasons why, just to knock out all my GEs and figure out exactly what college is going to be like before I transferred to a more expensive and more crowded college. But it also helped me figure out what I actually wanted to do. Going to community college, I was actually going to be a business major. And after a year of business classes, I was like, no, this isn't for me. But the history classes that I had, I actually was enjoying so much that I actually switched my major, and I had to take an extra 2 years before transferring to Cal State Fullerton. But in my mind, it was definitely worth it, because I felt way more comfortable with my major decision. And on top of that, I was, in community college, I was getting the foundation that I needed to be able to, go into Cal State Fullerton with the confidence that I needed to pass my classes.
Well, I want to thank the Santiago Community College for keeping you away from the business school, because I have the greatest respect for anyone with a business degree, but a business degree is completely useless. This is hyperbole, of course, so don't share this with others. I just believe, I'm convinced that if you go into business, you learn this. I know of a number of business students who are quite miserable in their major and really don't find it fun, but they think that's the only way in which they can build a career and make money. And I applaud all of those who you hear who know that if you learn something meaningful and something you care about, that you will be able to build your career path. We'll talk more about career paths in 300A. Yes, Jonathan.
Michael is here. Michael.
Yes,
Greenwald.
Michael. I will turn to you in a second, Michael. Okay.
All right. Cool.
But let's first ask Ashley. What did you value most about your community college experience?
Like everybody said, it helped me figure out what I want to do, and I took a Chicano Studies class just by chance, and then I ended up falling in love with the subject and ended up wanting to double major in it. And I mean, it was cheaper, so it was easier to figure out what I wanted to do. I changed my major God knows how many times. And yeah, basically what everyone's already said.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. And we have spontaneously joining us this morning also Michael Greenwald. Michael, what do you remember is the best thing about your community college years?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. Really, I wanted to be an athletic trainer, and I took a lot of like medical classes in my first couple of years of community college, and they were really boring, and I didn't do very well in them. And I'm the kind of student where like I need to be into the class and I need like to be engaged, and that just like ended up being history. I had to take them for my GEs, and I had a really good teacher, and I was like, if I'm going to be in school for like a couple more years, I might as well like do something that I'm interested in. And it helped me figure out like I got to do history. It's the only way I'm going to be able to graduate.
Yeah. I'm hoping that a lot of you here have made similar experiences in community colleges and learned there that to do what you love is really the first crucial step to having a meaningful career, one that will also pay your bills and allow you to build a life, but that you'll be happy to go to work for. And with a history degree, the chances that you'll find a job where you know that you matter is really quite high, and I think that's the importance here. Alexis, do you want to get us started on the next question?
Yeah. So the next question was what were the biggest challenges at CSUF compared to your community college? And I was going back to writing. It always was such like a daunting task to me. So going from writing 4 pages at OCC to writing, 8, 10 to eventually in your 490, 20 pages, it definitely was a transition. But I think the more classes you take, the more knowledge you acquire. So those papers actually get easier and easier because you start pulling from other classes you've taken to start forming your topics.
Thank you. Jonathan, what was the biggest challenge for you?
I think the biggest challenge for me was definitely, like Alexis said, the workload. In community college, the assignments, at least from the professors that I took, were 2 to 3 page papers, maybe read a chapter from this section that we're learning about. And it was, at least for me, it was intriguing. So I did the work regardless of whether or not I enjoyed it. But transferring to Cal State Fullerton, at times I thought I was even more unprepared than I would have if I just transferred straight to the Cal State from high school. But the 300A and 300B courses for transfer students were definitely the most helpful classes I've had to this date in the Cal State system. I had Professor Johnson for 300A, and he just opened my eyes just how much more complex, but how much more how much more complex writing a history paper is than just a few simple paragraphs. But taking those classes and then also getting in touch with my counselor, my advising counselor, definitely made me more confident in just finishing Cal State Fullerton. And now I'm in a spot where I don't question where I'm headed.
Good, excellent. Ashley, what did you find most difficult getting into Fullerton?
My thing is learning to ask for help. That's what I found most difficult. I know during my community college experience, I tried to figure everything out on my own, because I'm the first in my family to attend a university. But my advice is, set up a meeting with your advisor and look and utilize all the resources we have on campus. There's so many. And by doing this, you're networking, which is important if you want to continue your education.
Yeah, I think this is really good advice, and I think that lesson is one that a lot of students learn either early or late. Michael, what was your experience? What was your biggest hurdle in the beginning?
My biggest hurdle was I basically I went to school and I went to class and I had to leave because I had work in the afternoon, and I had to give myself time in my class schedule to be on campus, to be able to like talk to my professors and like spend more time at school, because there's a lot of like cool stuff on campus and professors like have a lot of free time and they're like really interesting, and it took me a while to figure out to like use that to my advantage. Yeah, just like working like that free time into my schedule. You can't just like go to class and go home. You can, but it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah. By the way, we don't have free time. We make time for you. But I think you're right that you need to learn that campus is not just a place you quickly go to, take a class, and then leave again. Then that there's more to it, and this is also true for our online experience. When you get emails from faculty inviting you to things, it's because we actually really would love to see you there. We really are delighted to have people participate in Zoom calls or conferences with student panels or alumni, any of those.
Can I also add one thing? Since this probably isn't something anyone is talking about right now because we're online, traffic and like parking is not very fun, but I will tell you, like, it took me a while to figure out too. There's always parking in A lot. If you get there after 9 o'clock, don't even mess with the structures. It's not even like worth it. There's always valet parking, and like don't stress. Just get there early and park far and walk.
Yeah, you want to plan ahead. Yeah. Now this will be easier in fall when you come in, because we have an additional parking structure that wasn't done yet when we shut down. So it's going to be a little less awful, but then also more people are going to come by car because they think it's easy. So parking always you want to plan for. I think Ashley's comment, like, know that you need to ask for help, is important. There will be so many people, and you probably are already overwhelmed with orientation because so many people send you links, told you where to go and what help there is, and everything is there for you. But in the end, you sit back and think, oh, where do I go now? What do I need? You need someone to turn to connect you to, say, the Writing Center or the Student Success Center to advise you on study abroad, or if you need, if being closed in at home and having only Zoom makes you feel like you're going mental and you want to. I don't mean to make this. I don't mean to be dismissive here. I'm saying if it really stresses you out. Where to find help, support, relief, virtually or in person on campus. You need someone to point you in the right way. And so don't be shy, ask. If you're struggling with a class, speak to your professor. Right? I've seen too many people, especially men, have the problem that they don't want to ask for help, and so they stoically drown. And you can see them doing worse and worse and worse, and then they're falling behind on their papers, and they just disappear because they think bravely they ought to do everything on their own, and so they fall apart over it because it's a lot, and you need help, and that's okay to need help. So make sure that you follow Ashley's advice there. Alexis, what was the next question that I so thoughtfully wrote out for you?
The biggest advantages, improvements, and new benefits that you learned at Fullerton. One that is really, it sounds really scary, and it's sad that we won't be able, or transfer students won't be able to take full advantage of it yet, is working with others in the classroom setting. It's just not the same on Zoom. And, it always sounds really annoying when a teacher is like, okay, group up. And that seems to be Fullerton's total stamp mark. Just, they always love group work. And at first, as a transfer student, you're like, I hate this. Just let me do my own thing. I know I especially hated it, but eventually it becomes so natural, and you learn to connect with people, which really helps too, because as history students, you're going to be taking a lot of the same classes with the same people, and you will see them again. So it helps to have that connection with other people. And an advantage and improvement that happen is you really begin to expand on the way you think. I wrote a paper on I've written so many. I'm trying to think of the one on a serial killer, and you think of just writing a serial killer paper as just that, and I turned it into how fairy tales can be warning signs for real life serial killers. So your brain just really expands in these really fascinating ways that you'll see towards the end of you being at Fullerton, how those changes happen and where they came from, what classes they came from too.
Thank you, Alexis. Jonathan.
Cool. For me, I think the biggest advantage of being a CSUF student, especially a history one, is the vast amount of resources that history students and the students at Cal State Fullerton in general have access to. The databases right now that you can access from the public library have been incredibly helpful for me in my research papers, in my assignments, not only for Professor Janssen, but also for my other history courses. The amount of resources that Cal State Fullerton has definitely been one of the biggest advantages of being a Cal State Fullerton student. Probably the other thing too is, like Alexis was saying, you being a history student, you just get to pick up on so many nuances you wouldn't otherwise. You start to think about things, more in depth, like, well, if this is happening in the world right now, what are the events that led to it in the past, or what were the setups that now we're, and we're now just seeing the consequence of that. Like, how did this all build up? And I think about that, and I think like that a lot of times nowadays, to where I think there's more to this than meets the eye. And in order to be a good history student, you have to take into account all the facts and all the sides before making your own personal opinion. And that's also helped me in my personal life as well.
Ashley, how about you?
At Cal State Fullerton, I feel like, oh, am I muted? No. There's more of a sense of community, and because when you're taking your major classes, you get to meet a lot of like-minded people and people like different perspectives too. I know as an ethnic studies major as well, all the research I've done in history has actually helped me with my research in Chicano studies as well.
Mm-hmm. Michael, how about you?
I think the biggest advantage at CSUF is the professors. I think really highly of my professors, and some of the most interesting conversations I've had on campus are with professors that I've never even taken a class with. They're just so open, and there's so many of them, especially in the history department. If you have a niche that you want to study and you don't oh, I want to study atheist woman in France 1730, there's probably a professor that knows a lot about that on campus somewhere, and especially Professor Janssen, he's helped me build my library. He assigns 6 books a semester, and just getting to read books, from 2010 that you wouldn't think you would ever read in a history classroom, from some philosopher in another country that got translated into English last year. The curriculum is really modern, and it's really a good gateway into, I think, the wider world of history and academia. I think they do a really good job of that.
Excellent. Well, that's really good to hear. Alexis, I had other good questions for you. What's the next one?
You have 3 more, so this is the 4th one. What do you wish people told you before coming to Fullerton, and what is your advice
I think that's
for
a good
students?
One. Yeah.
I wish somebody had told me your first semester will be a time of transition. I can't tell you how many times I cried thinking I won't be able to do this, because it seems hard, but it's really you learning what works for you figuring out parking, which you guys really have that taken off of your plate right now, and figuring out just how you yourself work with reading, if you have a job, and writing papers. And so that is something I really wish somebody had told me, is just don't worry, you'll figure it out. So my advice would be just let your first semester be a learning curve for you. I took 4 units my first semester.
4 classes, right?
Huh?
4 classes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, 4 classes. They say take 5 if you want to graduate in 2 years. I really recommend just taking 4 so you learn how teachers work and how you can balance your school. And so you can pick up that extra class somewhere else in the spring or summer so you don't have to stress, but just really let the first semester show you what works for you.
Yeah. Ashley, sorry, Jonathan, what do you wish someone had told you before you got here?
Parking, like Alexis said. But I think the thing I wish people told me before transferring is definitely go at your own pace. The first semester, I actually took 3 classes instead of 4. I was doing 4 to 5 per semester at community college. But, taking 3 classes, just experimenting and seeing, what I'm comfortable with definitely helped, open me up to the possibility that, hey, maybe 4 classes isn't as hard as I make it out to be. And it really hasn't been that hard. I've been taking 4 classes since transferring, and it's super duper easy. 5 is maybe a bit overkill right now, especially in the higher courses. But, pretty much on par with what Alexis said, just take your time. Cal State Fullerton is really good because it does offer those resources. Like I said, the big one for me was my advising counselor. Just getting in touch with them the first semester and starting to figure stuff out for the following semesters makes it so much easier. That like I said, it's just, for me, it's streamlined just because I can rely on those counselors to help me figure stuff out.
Yeah, very good. Ashley, how about you?
It doesn't necessarily apply now, but parking really is that bad. My friends told me, I'm like, oh, it can't be that bad. And it really is that bad.
Because everybody has parking circled on their little note sheet here, parking.
Yeah. And then my advice is talk to your professors, go to office hours, and not just because it's like the end of the semester and you want them to round up your grade. They're really cool people once you get to know them. And as a history student, I suggest you take 1 class with Dr. Jensen. He's my favorite professor. He's helped me become a better writer and a better historian.
Thank you, Ashley. Your payment will be processed. Well, I think you're definitely right on the value of actually talking to professors and not just going to class and then disappearing again. If you want professors to write you letters of recommendation, it helps when they know you. And for you to just sort of get a B+ in the course alone may not be enough for them to write a good. They will write you a letter, but it will not be an evocative letter. If they get to know you and they know your story a little and they know your interests, then they can do better work for you. So one of the reasons that you should go to office hours is not only to sort of hear what professors have to tell you about themselves. I mean, they like lecturing, so they will talk about themselves if you let them. That's fine, and that can be entertaining. But also let them know a little bit about you, what your interests are, and that's especially important when it comes to thinking about what to do once you graduate. As transfers, if you take 5 courses a semester, which is a big load, by the way, and I don't think that anyone should feel that that's an obligation. But either way, you will be done in 2 to 3 years, 2 to 2.5, 3 years. So that's not a lot of time. So before you know it, you already need to think about the next step. So if right now you think, oh, I'm just going to lean back and I'm going to be a student. I'm just going to enjoy sort of the freedom of just picking your courses and otherwise not having to stress about the future. That's not the case. you need to actually start not to stress, but to think about what to do next. And it doesn't have to be that you find the work for the rest of your life now, but you have to find something meaningful for after. I only found my dream job at how old was I when I started here? 33. So you don't need to feel a sense of panic if right now you're 25 or 23 or 24 and you don't quite exactly know what to do yet. And some of you, you're no longer 18. Armin, I don't know. I can't see that well through Zoom, but I'm assuming you're not straight from high school or straight from community college. So some of you come back knowing that it matters not necessarily how old you are or how fast you are, but that you make a decision to do something meaningful. So no one should feel a sense of panic or urgency about getting all their courses done and racing out of here. Make the most of the time here. That's much more important. It's better to take 4 courses and get A's and B's than 5 and get B's and C's. Or it's better to take 4 courses and be involved in other ways and be able to later say at a job application, yes, I was actually involved on campus and I participated in this, or I co-published this journal, than to just be out of here and be half a year younger. In the real world, no employer is going to look at you and say like, well, you're good, but you're just 1 year too old for us. That's not happening, you know. And in fact, to the relief of Vicente and Armin and others who may be older, it's also okay to come back with a history degree and be 30, 40, 50, 60, depending on your work field. Okay, Michael, did you have something to say on that question?
Yeah, I would say like figure out who your academic advisor is super early. I don't know if you've gone over that in the PowerPoint yet, but everyone has one. It's a random professor in your department and you get assigned it. Just shoot whoever that person is an email and be like, I'm a transfer student, and like kind of figure out what the general like idea of like the courses you need are. Because the more like units you take in the beginning that are double counted, like if like I've been trying to get into that history of science class for like 3 semesters and it's always full. Like if you can like figure out like classes like that to take and double count them, then you'll have like more freedom towards the end.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I am. I'm signing up for classes that I think are super interesting. I'm signing up for some weird like military history class with some crazy professor over the winter. I don't know.
It's arcane, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, military history, I never thought I'd have to take one of those. But I'm lucky that I have like the flexibility in my schedule to be able to say, I think that's interesting and I want to take that, and I can put that before like some boring like GE writing class or something.
Yeah. If you want to on your own find your advisor in your semester, right now going to the website won't help you because this is the wrong semester for it. But starting in January, if you want to find your dedicated advisor, if you go to Cal State Fullerton Department of History, the main page, go to the advising tab, and then there will be a link to where you can find your advisors. Okay. And Alexis, I think we have maybe we tackle the last 2 questions in one round.
All right. So to combine them, it was what resources should a new student pay attention to, and my future plans and our future plans. A resource that Ashley had touched on earlier is really get to know your professors. They do help out a lot. Professor Jansen's 300A class, I really recommend because he also helps you build a resume, which is extremely useful. So take that assignment serious because it cuts out a lot of work for you later. And he also made it a point to show his students what other opportunities are out there for history students. I was dead set on becoming a history teacher since I was in 8th grade. And when he showed us new opportunities, it really opened my eyes to, wow, you're not just casted into this one mold when you become a history student. And that really helps too, because I took the credential classes, which you'll have to take before getting into credential program. And I hated it. Like, I was like, wow, this really is not for me. And I would have been a ball of panic if I had not known what was out there. So some of the stuff that he showed was the DPAA, which I had saw that he had showed Nicole up there, and she was super fun to talk to and get to know. There is a base in Hawaii, and there's also a base in DC and I think in Illinois, but who wants to go there? So yeah, so I'm shooting to move to Virginia so I can work in the DC area, either with the DPAA, which is kind of hard to get into, so it is a dream job. And like Professor Jansen said, we don't have it figured out. We have what we want on the screen right there, but those are just goals and dreams. We don't have those right now, but it's something to work towards, which is really important. I also looked at, there's a Civil War battlefield, helping preserve those in DC, and museums. There's a women's in the military museum that goes around in DC that you can work on. So there's a lot of stuff out there that, saying an archivist or a curatorial worker is somebody in the back with dusty old books isn't exactly what you think it is. It can be so much more. You can be out there creating museum exhibits for people to go to and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I recommend his 300A class if you want to expand on really what Fullerton has to offer.
Yeah, thank you. Jonathan.
All right, to combine the two questions, definitely what everyone's mentioned so far, one of the most valuable resources you have on campus are your professors. Professor Janssen is probably the professor I talk to the most, but being in the history program, I've come in contact with other professors who I would definitely not mind having a conversation with, but who also provide really good insight just from taking their classes on what other histories are just as intriguing, if not just as interesting as American or strictly California history. Case in point, Professor Markley, who teaches mostly China and ancient Rome, really got me into ancient China as well, to the point where now that's another side thing, apart from being interested in American or California history, ancient Chinese history is also something that is intriguing me very much right now. As far as plans for the future, before I get there, one more resource I would definitely say crucially important for history students is the library. Even if you're just going there to study or want a quiet place to relax, the library I feel is like my go-to spot. And because it's not open right now, but if it was, they do also have some very resourceful and helpful staff in the library. So if you're ever struggling with a paper or trying to figure out, trying to figure out what book you can use to impress your professor, they have some very good resources there that I've used multiple times. And as far as the future goes, I did say, public sector would be my go-to. Pursuing history, I've actually gotten more and more into politics, and it's just renewed my interest in how our local government works. So having a background in history and also, exploring the inner workings of political sciences, it's an interesting combination that a lot of people can really use. But also possible future goal as well is probably going to Mexico and maybe working on some of the museums in Mexico, because where my grandparents live, they have access to a lot of old institutions like that. So that's probably another option I would consider.
Yeah, I want to point out for those of you who are bilingual, remember that being bilingual is a major asset and a strength, and it allows you to do a lot more things and also look more far and wide for opportunities. I had one student who wasn't bilingual but wanted to become bilingual, and so he took Spanish classes, and then he started driving from here south through Central and South America all the way, learning English along the way. Learning Spanish along the way. And he now teaches in Colombia, I forgot the town, but he's now a teacher in Colombia, and has conducted oral histories throughout the continent just by traveling. That's kind of a daredevil thing to do, so you don't feel compelled like that should be the path. But bilingualism is a major strength, and you should embrace that if you have that asset. Okay, I'm going to turn to Ashley. What are your? Tell me a little bit of your plans and what other resources haven't we mentioned yet for students?
For anybody who wants to go into education, I found the Center for Careers in Teaching to be super helpful. And it's not just for people who want to go into like K through 12, because initially I was really dead set on being a K through 12 history teacher. as I took more classes, I'm like, I want to be a professor. And they've kind of helped me set up my path for that as well. And my plans for the future. Right now I'm applying for graduate programs. One that I'm super interested about is the MA here at Cal State Fullerton with the Chicano Studies concentration. And then after that, I plan to pursue a PhD in history. And a little side note, if you want to pursue a PhD in history, you need to know another language.
Yes.
And then my absolute, that's my dream is to conduct research that it pertains to history and Chicano studies.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, Michael, do you have it all figured out? What's going to be your dream job?
Yeah, so I'm a high school tennis coach. I've been doing that for 6 years now, and so I feel kind of lucky. I know I really want to teach high school, and I love my kids, and I love my teachers that I have there, my other coaches that I work with, and the environment. So that's kind of where I'm going right now. I'm taking my pre-credential classes right now too. And by the time I graduate, I'll be applying for the credential program. But it's definitely not I'm not super set in stone about that. I definitely like trying different stuff, and I do comedy, I do music. Hopefully if the pandemic opens up, then or ends, then I'll be able to do that. I'll be able to go to more bars and meet rich and famous people. And I really like politics, and when things open up, I want to get more involved in my local community. But that definitely history is one of those things. If you just go for the degree, you don't really have to figure out what you want to do while you're doing it. It's such a well-rounded major, and you'll eventually find something you think is interesting. You'll meet a professor that has and I know this is the fourth time that we've said this in a row, but if you sign up for Professor Janssen's 300A class, you'll be getting emails from him for 2 years. It won't stop. It's the best resource that you can do. It's just get on Professor Janssen's email list, and you'll be set. You'll have all the information you need. You won't need to talk to another professor the whole time. That's not true, but Professor Janssen is really kind of the gateway professor, I feel, to the whole history department. And
I will say this, Michael, not to burst your bubble here, but I send these emails actually to all students. So you're still special, but I sent this to all of them. I will say that professors that have all my colleagues feel that way about their students in the early classes, and that's how you build these. That's how all my colleagues build these relationships. So of course I have students here that were in my class, but guys, once you're out there and you speak to other students, they will all tell you this about their 300A or 300B faculty. That's just, it's what we do. Not to take away from your experience, Michael, or to diminish my work, but it doesn't all depend on making the right professor's choice. The professors will do this. That's our job. But fun fact, I also was a comedian. I was a stand-up comedian in Germany, which, as you can imagine, is a hard environment to be funny in. And that was before the age of social media or Wi-Fi. So that's why there's no footage out there.
It's hard in California.
That's a blessing.
Too, I will tell you.
All right. So we spent a lot of time talking, and we have a little bit more time left. So I wanted to see what questions you guys have for our student panel. Alexis, you had a quick comment to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, just in case, nobody asks a question, I think maybe it might be a good idea for us to share which teachers besides Dr. Janssen we think are good teachers, just because you rate my professor and it might not always be accurate. So I was thinking Dr. McLean is really great. He's really funny, Southern Mississippi boy. So he's pretty hilarious. I don't know if no, he doesn't teach there anymore. I think he's part-time. Natalie Fusakis is really good. She helps a lot. Dr. Gunther is hilarious. if you want a teacher, and this is not to get her in trouble or anything, but if you want a teacher who does cuss and makes jokes, she's she's the one. So yeah, I don't know if Jonathan, Ashley, or Michael want to add to what teachers are really good to
I'm
take.
I'm gonna let people ask some other questions in case they do have some. If we fall on dead air, we can maybe share some other favorites. But I want to make sure that people who have other questions. But thank you, Alexis. All right, let's see. Scott.
I really appreciate the feedback from your students. I think it was, let me minimize this. Ashley, you said that for when getting your PhD, you require an additional language.
Yes.
Is there a list that's like a list of options, or is it just any language?
I
All
mean,
PhD. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
I was looking at programs at like UCLA because I'm interested in pursuing their Chicano Studies PhD, and I need to be able to pass a test to test my proficiency in Spanish. And then I know Dr. Sun had mentioned that you need to be able to read and write languages, so like Vietnamese or any other language, I guess.
If you want to say study the history of Vietnam and you don't speak Vietnamese, that's a problem. If you want to study the history of Germany, but you can't read a German source, that's a problem. But apart from that, every good PhD program that I know requires their students to know a second language in writing and reading proficiency, definitely in reading proficiency, just as a matter of being able to have access to more than just English-based literature. For example, if you want to do ancient history, a lot of stuff is in German from the middle of the 19th century on the history of ancient Rome, for example. So to not be able to read German then is a real disadvantage. So as a rule, you should have a second language skill somewhere there for the PhD, that is. All right, there were other questions. Let's see what other hand is up. RT.
Yeah, I just had a quick one for just doubling up on classes and making sure we kind of hit two birds with one stone. Who should we get in contact with, and what's the easiest way to go about that?
You cut off in the beginning on my end. What did you say at the beginning?
He was talking about doubling down on classes, like double counting.
Double counting?
Yeah, so who should we contact to make sure we are doing that?
You don't have to contact anybody for this. If you take a course that meets your GE requirement and a history requirement, that will be recorded on your TDA on its own.
Okay, cool.
You don't need to do anything there.
Quick comment on that one. By double counting, you do get the number of classes down that you need, but you still need to get the required credits. So in my experience, I have 2 classes that are actually double counting. But by double counting, you still need to get the required number of credits. So if it's a course that you're getting 4 credits for, and it's double counting in a class, you still need to get the 4 extra credits as an elective.
Yeah, we went over that in the beginning. I actually offered this as an asset of the double counting, that you are leaving more room to the 120 unit minimum that you need for graduation. So that is why if you double count, you may finish actually with 104, 105 units. That gives you room for a minor without going beyond the 120 units. Thanks,
Okay.
Jonathan, for clarifying that. All right, there's some other hands up. Daisy, is your hand up from earlier, or do you have a question?
I had a question.
Yeah.
I was interested in internships, but during this time, during COVID, is it possible to do internships?
Yes, but the options are more limited. For example, just yesterday, I advised a student to apply for an internship at a company called Paragon Publishing. They are a small publishing house in Orange, I believe, and they do a lot of things virtually and online. And museums generally have become a little more creative. We have a list of internships that if you email Professor Mikhail, he will send to you. And some of them are highlighted as being virtual and online. Others have always been online. And with others, if you're really interested, you may just want to contact them and ask. So it's harder, but it's not impossible. Bear in mind also that right now with the discussion about vaccines, in fall, there's a good chance we'll be back. And so that if internships aren't something for the first semester, they are a good option for the second or even for the third semester.
And would that count as a class?
Well, that would be your elective. So that would work as your history elective.
Okay, thank you.
I think the number is a 496, I think is the course number, but I may be wrong on that. Okay. Let's see. Julia, you had your hand up?
Hi, yes, I was curious. I don't know if you already answered this, but if I want to take like History 386A, am I required to take the 386B class as well?
No.
Okay.
No, you can. The only thing that you have to do is 300A, 300B. After that, the A's or B's, they just usually are part. They indicate that they are part of a package or a chronology. For example, I teach economic history of the United States to 1900. That's 479B, and 479C is economic history of the United States after 1900. But you can take one or the other, and 479A is something else entirely.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Liam, your hand was up. Okay. All right. I think there are no more questions there now. I will close our presentation here and stop the share. And I will make sure that I the PowerPoint will be posted in the chat. Okay. So everything that you saw here, you can now, provided I get this right, hang on just for a few more minutes, and I will make sure that you can get the PowerPoint. Just bear with me. And this, I'm sure you already know, is part of your Zoom experience, that you're watching your professors scanning their monitors and trying to find things and figure things out. Okay, let's see here. Okay.
Professor, while you do that, I just
Yes.
wanted to make a quick comment on the 300A and 300B classes. I took them at the same time, and you're not supposed to. If you do, it is a lot of work. So just kind of, if you get in a pinch and do have to take them at the same time, it's not doable. But I definitely would say I wouldn't recommend it.
Yes, and that's also what I did earlier. I urged everyone to not combine those things. Okay, everybody. I'm uploading the transfer orientation presentation you just saw, but I also see that it had included the videos that are embedded. So that means you are waiting for 361 megabytes. Hang around, I'll keep this open, but I'm also going to email you all a PowerPoint without those videos included so that you don't have this major file transfer, okay? So just wait for my email and I'll send you the PowerPoint. With that, our time is up. I hope this was somewhat useful. Thank you for taking the time, listening carefully, and we are excited to see you in spring, all right? So thank you all, and have a good afternoon. Bye.
All right. Bye, Professor.
Take care, Jonathan. Bye.
Guys, appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Christopher. See you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. Okay. So I'm going to, for those of you still there, I'm going to email you quickly the PowerPoint without that massive video file inside. All right. Jet, Sam, and Colin, I'm actually going to stop this because this transfer orientation presentation with videos is going to take way too long. So just wait for my email. I think that's more practical than for us to hang around for another half hour for this thing to upload. And then you have to download it. That's not worth the time. All right. All right. So I'm going to cancel that transfer and I'm going to close the Zoom. All right. So take care. See you all.